is the gentleman completed?
Yeah,
We're going to leave House rules from earlier this afternoon and take you live to the floor of the U.S. House here on C-SPAN.
Committee on Rules for filing under the rule.
The clerk will report the title.
Report to accompany House Resolution 383, resolution providing for consideration of the bill, Senate 627, to establish the Commission on Freedom of Information Act processing delays.
Referred to the House calendar and ordered printed. For what purpose does the gentleman from Texas rise?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. By the direction of the Committee on Rules, I call up House Resolution 382 and ask for its immediate consideration.
The clerk will report the resolution.
House Calendar Number 63, House Resolution 382, resolution waiving a requirement of Clause 6, resolved that the requirement of Clause 6A of Rule 13 for a two-thirds vote to consider a report from the Committee on Rules on the same day it is presented to the House is waived with respect to any resolution reported through the legislative day of August 2, 2011.
The gentleman from Texas is recognized for 1 hour.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, for the purpose of debate only, I yield the customary 30 minutes to the gentleman from Colorado, my friend, Mr. Polis, pending which I yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentleman is recognized.
During consideration of this resolution, all time is yielded for the purpose of debate only. Madam Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members have 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks.
Without objection.
House Resolution 382 waives the requirement of Clause 6 of Rule 13 requiring a two-thirds vote to consider a rule on the same day it is reported by the Rules Committee. This would allow for the same-day consideration of any resolution reported through the legislative day of August the 2nd, 2011. This rule will ensure that Congress has the necessary tools to pass a bill that ensures we cut spending without defaulting on our national debt. Madam Speaker, today you will hear my friends, the Democrats, argue about a closed process, but you will not hear them discuss the unprecedented spending spree that my friends, the Democrats on the other side of the aisle, went through for the last 2 Congresses. We will discuss how Republicans continue to come up with thoughtful solutions, and I add balanced, thoughtful solutions to our nation's economic troubles, what we think will and what has up to now only failed in the Senate. We will talk about the magnitude of this vote and the importance of reaching an agreement before Tuesday. Madam Speaker, it is time to stop pontificating and to start acting like members of Congress. The nation calls for a solution, and Republicans are the only ones of the 2 bodies to offer solutions in legislation, in debate on the floor, and with actual votes. My friends on the other side of the aisle will go on and on today about how Republicans are closing the process and shutting out members of Congress. Well, when we're really here providing for the flexibility for the Speaker of the House to simply work with the Senate to ensure a solution to the looming debt crisis deadline is met, so that we will not default on our obligations. If my Democrat colleagues were serious about finding a solution to this problem, they would vote in favor of this rule today. The facts of the case are clear. The chairman of the Rules Committee, the gentleman David Dreyer from California, has issued more open rules in the last month than Congress has seen over the last 2 Congresses, or for a total of 4 years combined. Additionally, in the 111th Congress, under the leadership of Nancy Pelosi and the chairman of the Rules Committee at the time, Louis Slaughter, 26 same-day rules were reported out of the Rules Committee, and the previous Congress, the 110th Congress, under the same leadership, 17 same-day rules were reported out by the Rules Committee. In comparison, the process regarding these rules in this Congress is a far cry from the previous Democrat leadership, unorthodox and unprecedented closed processes. I rise today in support of this rule. This rule is essentially to allow the House of Representatives the flexibility it needs to ensure the safety and soundness of our country's economic future. Over the past 4 years, we've seen record debt and deficits, which has brought us to the crossroads that we face with the looming August 2nd deadline for raising the debt ceiling. Americans continue to speak out loudly and clear. And just as they did last November, they are saying it is time to stop the out-of-control spending, wasteful Washington spending, and excessive government. Republicans have cut spending at every opportunity this Congress, and we are hoping to do that again today. Discretionary and mandatory spending at federal levels are on unsustainable paths. In the last 2 years of Democrat control, Congress has approved and the President has signed into law an 84% increase in non-defense discretionary spending. And the President's budgetary processes, of which he proposes to freeze discretionary spending at these inflationary levels, is unprecedented. America can no longer support or afford this kind of leadership. The President's proposed four-year 2012 budget also doubles, then triples the federal deficit over the next 10 years. And while increasing taxes on the nation's job creators by $1.6 trillion sounds like a good deal to the President, in fact, the free enterprise system employers and American workers know otherwise. Additionally, the President's budget makes no substantial effort to address the unsustainable rate of entitlement spending, one of the major aims of the President's own fiscal commission, which he has ignored. Obviously, the President has no intention of cutting spending or reining in big government programs. Big government, more taxes, more regulations are directly in the President's strike zone, and that is the process he intends to challenge Congress to come right on with him and keep marching towards the cliff. Madam Speaker, we're at the end of the road. We're at the end of the road, and once again today, Republicans are saying we are going to have to make tough choices. That's why we came to Congress, and the majority party will continue to do that today. Over the past 7 months, Republican leadership has been steadfast in their support for cutting spending, getting control of our record deficit and debt. The House passed H.R. 1, a continuing resolution that brought back spending levels to 2008 levels, cutting $100 billion in 1 year. In April, this House passed a budget that would cut $6.2 trillion in government spending over the next decade compared to the President's budget. Just last week, this body passed Cut, Cap, and Balance, which would limit discretionary spending, cap spending to a lower percentage of GDP, and lead to a balanced budget act, so Congress could no longer write checks that they can't cash without passing the debt on by asking foreign governments and others to make up the difference for us. Republicans are willing to pay the balance if the President is willing to cut up the credit card. And that is why we are here also today. Republicans have again and again in the House offered common sense solutions to rein in spending and cut down our debt. And my friends on the other side of the aisle continue to reject every single proposal. So, one might ask, what is their solution? What they have offered this nation to spur economic growth and to put Americans back to work? We would ask. So, let me tell you, by raising taxes. By raising taxes on individuals, on small businesses, and corporations alike. This is no wonder why we see stagnant job growth, GDP that lags behind, and employment that means we cannot meet the needs of this country. Even when the increase in taxes hurts our economic recovery, slows job growth, and places more jobs in uncertainty in the marketplace, our friends the Democrats continue to argue for more spending and more taxation. President Obama has asked Congress for an increase in debt in the debt ceiling, and my Republican colleagues and I refuse to grant that request without a commitment to long-term spending cuts. We reject President Obama's insistence for a blank check to pay the credit card bills that he has run up over the past 2.5 years. President Obama's unwillingness to address the true drivers of our debt assured me and my party that we cannot achieve a true solution to the debt crisis we're facing today unless we're able to make tough decisions. The Budget Control Act we discussed yesterday and what we will discuss today is a step in the right direction. It accomplishes what Republicans and the American people have been asking for since the beginning of this process. It will reduce spending more than we increase the debt limit. It imposes no new taxes on anyone, and it guarantees to Americans that the House and the Senate will vote in the next 6 months on the only permanent solution to our debt crisis. Yes, Madam Speaker, the Republicans are here on the floor again, working on behalf not only of employers and employees, but the middle class of this country, those of us who are concerned about where we are headed. There is nothing in this resolution that should cause anyone to worry about losing Social Security or Medicare. That is not even intended in this process. What is to solve the spending and the debt crisis that we have in this country. I encourage a yes vote on this rule, and I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves his time. Gentleman from Colorado.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Before I begin, a point of personal privilege. I thank the gentleman from Texas for the time. We on the Rules Committee and as members of Congress rely on the hard work of our staff people, particularly on Rules Committee, working into the wee hours of the night, last night being example till 11:30. After 3 years of tremendous service, my Rules Associate, Rosalind Kumar, has accepted another position in the Senate, and I just want to express my appreciation for my hard work. She hails from the city of Dallas, Texas, and her hometown rep is my colleague on the Rules Committee, Mr. Sessions, and I'd like to yield for a moment to my colleague, Mr. Sessions.
To me, Rosalind, congratulations. I'm going to miss you. It is a good day for you. It's a bad day for us. It is with regular occurrence that I look over at you. You have a bright, smiling face. You have the enthusiasm not only of a bright young staffer, a professional staffer on the Rules Committee, but I think you will be a true asset to Senator Stabenow as you take the experiences from a body that does a lot of work to a body that needs to do more work, and I wish you the very best. If I could, I'd also like to tell the gentleman that Jenny Gorich, who is behind me, a professional member of the staff member of the Rules Committee, will also be leaving. I found out after this process she'll be going to Congressman Doc Hastings' office to be his adult supervision. So we're taking 2 Rules Committee professional staff members who will aid and help other members in their betterment, and I thank the gentleman for allowing me.
Thank the gentleman for Texas, and I yield myself such time as I may consume.
Gentleman's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to be perfectly clear about what we're talking about here today. From the moment Speaker Boehner walked away from the negotiating table last Friday to the opening bell of the stock markets this morning, shareholders in U.S. stocks, American retirees, investors, our middle class, have lost $405 billion based on Third Way's analysis of data from the Standard & Poor's 500 index, and Americans stand to lose more if we fail to resolve this crisis. Third Way has put together a comparison between the interest rate paid on sovereign debt between AAA and AA nations. This is why credit is important. People understand that. Depending on your credit rating, you pay a different rate on your home mortgage. You might have different financing opportunities on your credit card. If America misses a debt payment, the rating agencies have let us know that it likely will result in a downgrade from AAA status to AA status. I would also point out that this current bill before us would likely lead to that as well, because it only contains a short term, a 6-month renewal of our debt ceiling. And having watched the dysfunction of Congress over the last few weeks, the global investment community, those who loan us money, will say the last thing we need to do is put ourselves through this again in 6 months to ensure stability. Countries that have AAA ratings have an average 10-year bond rate of 2.98%. Countries that have AA have an average bond rating of 3.75%. So 3/4% difference. What does that mean? It means 0.75% on your variable rate home mortgage. It means 0.75% on your automobile. And yes, it means more government expenditures, bigger government expenditures, just to cover the debt that we already have. In fact, that difference, that 0.75% difference over the next 10 years will cost taxpayers in additional interest payments over $1 trillion. So here we are with a bill that cuts spending, cuts $915 billion of spending, but because it will likely lead to a downgrade, will cost over $1 trillion. This bill before us today will increase the deficit by over $100 billion. At a time of record deficits, when we all know we need to enforce fiscal discipline, the last thing we need is an irresponsible bill to increase the deficit by $100 billion, which is what we have before us today. Now, if we had this bill before us 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, I would still oppose it. Increasing the deficit is the last thing we need to do now. But it would have been an interesting discussion. It would have been a maneuvering in politics and all this stuff that this body does too much of in posturing, in my opinion. But here we are 3.5 days from the debt ceiling expiring. And the gentleman from Texas and the chairman of our Rules Committee and many others have said, we know we need to do this. We know we need to do this. Well, you know what? If we know we need to do this, why are we doing this 3.5 days before the expiration of the debt ceiling? Why are we potentially passing a bill that will increase the federal deficit, that will almost certainly lead to a downgrade, that the Senate has said they will kill, that the President has said he will veto? I understand that the plan was to pass this bill last night. I understand that the majority party was short of a few votes. That would have been yet another window of opportunity for this Speaker, who has had many, to negotiate a real solution, to be the statesman, to work with the President and the Senate to come up with a bipartisan package to increase the debt ceiling, cut spending, decrease the deficit. The President's talked about decreasing the deficit by $4 trillion. Instead, we have before us a bill that's likely to increase the deficit by $100 billion, the last thing we need from Congress at this juncture in time. 3.5 days, Madam Speaker, is how long we have to get this right. I ask you, Madam Speaker, is this the step we need to take towards that outcome, passing yet another ideological bill that will cost taxpayers $100 billion and cost middle-class families another percentage point on all the debt that they have? Madam Speaker, there is a route out of this, and the route out of this does not involve the majority party trying to pull back the 4 or 5 or 6 people that they need over there. The path out of this is the Speaker engaging us, engaging all members of this chamber, engaging the President of the United States, who has to sign this at the end of the day, engaging the Senate Majority Leader and the Senate Minority Leader, to go back to that table that Speaker Boehner walked out on last Friday, to negotiate a real solution to the deficit crisis and the spending crisis that has gripped this country, that could very well lead to a downgrade and increased deficit spending unless we get our arms around it. Look, I think many on my side of the aisle are open to a compromise. President Obama himself has called for a compromise, and I know my office and the offices of many other members of Congress have received hundreds of calls from constituents echoing that desire to reach a solution on this. I fear that the step before us today is yet another example of the dysfunction of this institution under this leadership. But it's not too late. I call upon the Speaker to move away from this direction and get back to the negotiating table to establish a real solution to reduce the deficit, retain our nation's good credit and faith in our system, and show that this institution, the institution of the House of Representatives and the institution of Congress, can work and do what's right for our country. And I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Texas.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. At this time, I would like to yield 5 minutes to the gentleman, brand new member of the Rules Committee, one of our 87 new Republican freshmen, the gentleman from Lawrenceville, Georgia, the gentleman, Congressman Woodall. 5 minutes.
Gentleman from Georgia is recognized for 5 minutes.
I very much thank my friend from Texas for yielding. It's true. I'm one of the new guys there on the Rules Committee, one of the new guys here in this Congress. And because I haven't been watching this process go on quite this closely before, I'm prepared to answer the question today of why are we here and why are we here doing this. Now, for folks who don't watch the process, hadn't watched it like I have, what this rule is that we're working on today is to say you can bring up a bill in the Rules Committee and then bring that bill to the floor on the very same day, and that's unusual because regular order in this body says if you bring something up, let's let it sit overnight. Everybody has a chance to look at it. We'll bring it up the next day. I'm a big proponent of regular order. I believe we get the best work product out of this body when we work through regular order. And we've done that time and time and time again in this Congress, and we'll do it time and time again in the future. But today, we're faced with a predicament where August 2nd is looming on the horizon. Now, it's Friday. For folks who don't know, we're not going home tonight after work. Don't worry, Madam Speaker. As you know, this House is going to be in full swing tonight, tomorrow morning, tomorrow night, on Sunday, on Monday, to get America through this challenge. But my White House, my President, tells me that August 2nd is the day by which we must pass a bill. And here we are at the last hour to make that happen. Now, why are we at the last hour? That was a question my friend from Colorado asked, and I have the answer. Because we didn't actually start this process today. We didn't start it last night in the Rules Committee. We started this process back in February with H.R. 1, a bill to fund the government all the way through October 1st of this year. It was an open rule. For the first time in the history of this House of Representatives, it was an open rule on a continuing resolution. It took us 5 days, going day and night, 24 hours a day at the end, to get that bill discussed fully, because we all had input on that process. We all had things that we wanted to add, and this House passed that bill. It went across to our friends in the Senate, and they did nothing. Now, we had another shot at this in April, when we worked through the budget process. Now, that budget process, as you know, Madam Speaker, is supposed to take us through 10 years. 10 years. And we ask every member of this House of Representatives to bring their ideas to the floor. And the Rules Committee, in its wisdom, made every single budget that any member of this House offered available as a bill on the floor to consider. And we debated them all. There were some that raised taxes by $10 trillion. There were others that cut spending by $10 trillion. And all in between. And we debated them all, and the House decided on one, the House budget, in April of this year. And we sent it to the Senate, and they did nothing. Now, in fairness, they did defeat that bill we sent to them. They defeated ours. We only got 40 votes on ours. Now, that was better. They worked on the President's budget over there. He got 0 votes on his. So they're good at defeating things, but they didn't pass anything at all. And that's the partnership we have to have. I say to my friend from Colorado, I'm so proud of our partnership in the Rules Committee, and really our partnership beyond the Rules Committee, too, on some of the issues that we work on here. If we could develop the kind of partnership with our friends in the Senate that we've been able to develop between ourselves here on the House side, it would be a completely different situation here in Washington, D.C. But even as part of that raucous freshman class that folks read about in the newspaper, Madam Speaker, I don't have the ability to control what goes on in the United States Senate. All I have the ability to do is come down here and participate in our process, which in February produced H.R. 1, which could have averted this crisis today. In April, produced the House budget, which could have averted this crisis today. And last week, produced Cut, Cap, and Balance, which, sent to the Senate, and they did nothing, could have averted this crisis yet again. But in light of all of those failures of action in the Senate, we are forced to come here today, and we don't have overnight to lay a bill over. We don't have 72 hours to lay a bill over. We only have 72 hours until my President tells me D-Day arrives for our financial markets. And so we're here supporting this rule for same-day consideration so that we can do whatever it takes to get the job done.
Madam Speaker, I'd like to extend the gentleman 2 additional minutes.
Gentleman is recognized for 2 additional minutes.
I very much thank the gentleman from Texas. We're going to do whatever it takes to get the job done. But there's a teaching moment in this process, Madam Speaker. Maybe it's obvious to some of the senior members. Again, I'm one of the new guys, only 7 months on the job here in Congress. But what I've noticed this week is this. Last night, we tried to bring up a bill. Now, it was a bill that our Speaker and the Majority Leader of the Senate negotiated over last weekend. And we thought bringing that bill to the floor would be that compromise, and I promise you it was a compromise because it was not what I wanted to bring to the floor of this House. We thought that compromise would be the solution to get America out of this situation. And we couldn't find... I'd be happy to yield to my friend.
The Majority Leader of the Senate has never at any time expressed support for this bill and actually opposes this bill, and I'll yield back to the gentleman to clarify that.
I thank my friend. There's lots of conversation in this town, but I maintain that this was the topic of discussion and agreement between the Speaker and the Majority Leader last week, and absolutely the Majority Leader's walked away from that agreement since then. I don't dispute that. But here's the thing. We had this agreement on the floor of the House last night, and we couldn't find one Democrat vote in favor of it. Now, fair enough. Folks ought to vote their conscience. They ought to do what they need to do. We couldn't find one Democrat vote in favor of it, and we've come back with a new bill today that moves us to the right. Moves us to the right. Now, as someone who comes from one of the most conservative districts in the country, I think that's fantastic. More moving to the right. Let's keep on moving. There's a lot more space over there. Let's move some more over to the right. But I say to my friends on the left, as we try to get through a crisis, a national crisis, we only needed a few votes from you last night, and this would have been a bipartisan bill. But instead, we're back down here today, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman from Colorado.
I'd like to yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from New York, a member of the Budget Committee, Mr. Tonko.
Gentleman from New York is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I thank my colleague from Colorado for yielding. Here we go again, my friends. Here we go again, wasting another day of debate on a proposal that is more of a press release than a plan. News broke this morning that from the moment Speaker Boehner walked away from the table last Friday to the opening bell this morning, shareholders in the United States stocks lost over $400 billion. My colleagues have been unwilling, not unable, to reach compromise in this chamber. They have been unwilling, not unable, to tell extremists that while they write their press releases and shake their fists, the rest of us must go get down to governing. They have been unwilling, not unable, to let us vote on a balanced plan. And that choice, for it was a choice, cost the American economy almost as much in 5 business days as my Republican colleagues are trying to cut from the budget in 5 years. They're using a manufactured crisis to make the problem worse. And so here we are again. My Republican colleagues have wasted another 24 hours making a bad plan worse, a plan that is based on the same tired policies that got us into this mess. Cut taxes for millionaires, give kickbacks to special interests, pay for it all with cuts to the middle class, including Medicare and Social Security. And if they try to tell you that these cuts are not in this bill, ask them to sign a pledge that this legislation will not be used to cut benefits for seniors in the next 12 months. They won't. After my Republican colleagues pulled their bill from the floor last night, they went back to the negotiating table. But with whom? The Senate? No. The President? Surely not. No, they went back behind closed doors to negotiate with themselves, to run further to the right at the behest of the most ideologically entrenched members of their caucus. This may be good politics, but it's not good government. I'm tired of it. My constituents are tired of it. Anyone who's watched the nightly news for the last 6 months is tired of it. Washington loves to kick the can down the road. That's how we got here in the first place. This is our moment. We need a plan, not another Republican manifesto, and there are better plans out there. So again, I ask my Republican colleagues, let us vote on a plan that has a chance. With that, I yield back.
Gentleman from Texas.
I reserve my time.
Gentleman reserves his time. Gentleman from Colorado.
Thank you. And again, my colleague from Georgia mentioned that there are oh, no Democrats behind this initiative. Again, Democrats were not consulted or talked to ask for their support or input into this initiative. And you won't find much support for a proposal that could increase the deficit by $100 billion over 10 years. The Democrats and our Democratic plan are seeking to decrease the deficit by trillions of dollars over that same period rather than increase it by $100 billion as the Republican plan does. Madam Speaker, I'd like to yield 3 minutes to the gentleman from Massachusetts, my colleague on the Rules Committee, Mr. McGovern.
Gentleman from Massachusetts recognized for 3 minutes.
I thank the gentleman. Madam Speaker, I rise in strong opposition to this closed martial law rule. Today is a sad, sad day. In just a few days, the process in this House has completely devolved. It's shameful. We've gone from open rules to closed rules to same-day martial law rule, all because a few extreme members of the House refuse to do the right thing. The rule today paves the way for a bill that's even a worse bill than the one the Republicans were forced to pull from the floor yesterday. That's not coming together, Madam Speaker. It's pushing us further and further apart. These last few days have not been about trying to find a united solution. These last few days and last few weeks have been about trying to unite the House Republicans. It has been wasted opportunities. For weeks and weeks and weeks, my Republican friends have walked away from a balanced, fair, and bipartisan approach, allowing the United States to pay its bills. They've walked away from a balanced, fair, and bipartisan approach to addressing the nation's long-term fiscal challenges. Democrats have been willing over and over and over again to move forward on such an approach. To be honest, I'm not thrilled with some of the things that President Obama has put on the table, but I'm willing to consider them in order to get past this crisis. Unfortunately, the Republican leadership of this House is unwilling to meet us halfway. They're not even willing to meet us a tenth of the way. All we are asking for, I think all the American people are asking for, is a balanced approach. All we are asking for is for everyone to chip in to solve this problem. I'll say to my friends on the other side of the aisle, if you're going to ask seniors to pay more for their Medicare, if you're going to cut vital investments in education, transportation, medical research, and other programs, then the least you can do is ask the various wealthiest Americans to pay their fair share. How in the world can my friends on the other side of the aisle justify slashing Medicare while they refuse to ask big oil and gas companies or corporate jet owners or hedge fund managers to give up their unnecessary and unjustified taxpayer subsidies? But that's their position, Madam Speaker, not asking billionaires to pay a little bit more, but asking middle-class families to pay a lot more. It's reckless, it's wrong, it's unfair, and I, for one, will not go along with it. My friend from Texas, Mr. Sessions, says we have to make tough choices. I agree. We have to make tough choices. But why do you always have to be tough on working families or on poor people or on senior citizens? They didn't create this economic crisis. We're in this mess because of unpaid-for tax cuts, mostly for wealthy people. We're in this mess because of 2 wars that are not paid for, that are on our credit card. We're in this mess because of a prescription drug bill that wasn't paid for. I would say to my colleagues, enough of the press releases, enough of the theatrics, enough of the political stunts. I urge you to reject this martial law rule and get back to the negotiating table and avert an economic crisis. I yield back right there.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Texas.
I continue to reserve.
Gentleman continues to reserve time. Gentleman from Colorado.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to yield 2 minutes to the gentlewoman from Connecticut, Ms. DeLauro.
Gentlewoman from Connecticut is recognized for 2 minutes.
We are now 4 days away from an historic, unprecedented, and needless default that could grind this economy to a halt. And yet, even as they show their disarray to the entire world, this House Republican majority is continuing to hold our nation hostage to press their radical agenda. Worse, with only 4 days to go, they're moving in the wrong direction. The Speaker should have taken yesterday's rebuke by his own party as a clear indication that he needs to go back to the drawing board and pass a debt ceiling increase that both parties can sign on to. Instead, he and the Republican majority have doubled down on ideology and dangerous brinkmanship, requiring that a balanced budget constitutional amendment, a total non-starter that would threaten Medicare and Social Security, be sent to the states before a second debt ceiling increase is approved. This ensures another Republican-created crisis in only a few short months. This bill slashes $917 billion from critical public investments, education, infrastructure, research, law enforcement, food safety, and even though the spending on these programs is less than what it was under the Reagan and the first Bush administration. In fact, members of the majority even balked at $17 billion in Pell Grant funding in the bill because to some of them, helping Americans go to college is, and I quote, the welfare of the 21st century. We know that deficits have grown because revenues are lower than they've been in the last 60 years, thanks to the Bush tax cuts for the wealthy and the 2 wars that have been put on the nation's credit card. With 14 million unemployed, we should be focused on creating jobs, putting Americans back to work. It's time for the majority to quit playing political games. Start acting responsibly with the stewardship of our economy. I urge my colleagues to oppose this bill. Start to work on what the American needs most right now. That's jobs. I yield back.
Gentleman from Texas.
Madam Speaker, thank you very much, and I'm delighted that the gentlewoman comes down and talks about this game that's going on about jobs. I'd like to ask unanimous consent to insert into a record information on actual job hikes, tax increases and job hikes, and what that does to American jobs.
Without objection.
And, Madam Speaker, I'm going to read from this article. This past January, Illinois Governor Pat Quinn signed into law a 67% increase in the state personal income tax rate and a 45% increase in the state corporate tax rate. Between its passage then and June, Illinois lost 56,223 jobs. To combat this job loss caused by higher taxes on business, the Illinois Department of Commerce has already shelled out, and I quote, has already shelled out some $230 million in corporate subsidies to keep the more than 24 companies from fleeing the state. Well, this is exactly what President Obama is suggesting for America. The same thing that they do at his home state in Illinois, raise taxes substantially on all those rich people and corporations. Madam Speaker, 56,000 job loss. They're now having to spend an incredible amount of money to convince people, really to pay them off, just to stay. This is the game that the Democratic Party plays. This is exactly what the gentlewoman was talking about the serious elements of jobs and the consequences of killing jobs in this country. Madam Speaker, I will tell you the Republican Party will not fall victim to raising taxes like the Democratic Party and like President Obama wants us to do. We will not raise the debt limit without making tough choices. And, Madam Speaker, we're going to add jobs and do the things that are right that the American people expect us to do. And that's why we're here today. I reserve my time.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Colorado.
Madam Speaker, I have an article entitled Debt Ceiling Impasse Rattles Short-Term Credit Markets, again from the New York Times, discussing how this uncertainty that is not being caused by external factors but is being caused by us, by politicians, by people here in this body, is rattling those who lend our country money. And that's why this plan before us today will increase the deficit by over $100 billion over 10 years. In addition to those spending cuts, it will cost taxpayers more in interest payments if it jeopardizes our credit rating. Madam Speaker, I'd like to submit this to the record. I ask unanimous consent.
Without objection.
And I'd like to yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Kentucky, Mr. Yarmouth.
From Kentucky is recognized for 2 minutes.
I thank the gentleman from Colorado. Madam Speaker, yesterday our Republican colleagues said their party was using the leverage of the default crisis to get what they want, their ideological agenda passed. The problem is it's not what the American people want. Our constituents have made it very clear that when we're trying to solve our deficit crisis, they want a real compromise, shared sacrifice, where millionaires, billionaires, and oil companies are asked to contribute. They also want their Social Security and Medicare benefits protected. Now, with the clock ticking on the entire economy, they definitely don't want us wasting time on this hoax of a bill that has no chance of passing in the Senate. The Republicans took a bad bill and made it worse and less likely to pass, putting in the requirement for sending a constitutional amendment to the states which requires 2/3 of each body. If that doesn't happen, 6 months from now, what happens? The country defaults again. That may help the Republicans, may help the Republican leadership save face with the Tea Parties in their party, but it does nothing to help the American people and save us from a pending economic chaos. This isn't leadership. It's the worst type of failure. It's a failure to stand up for what we know is right, a failure to stand up for the American people, and a failure to protect and preserve the United States of America. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Texas.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. At this time, I'd like to yield 2 minutes to the distinguished gentleman from Savannah, Georgia, the gentleman, Mr. Kingston.
Gentleman from Georgia is recognized for 2 minutes.
I thank the gentleman for yelling. Madam Speaker, Americans have had to tighten their belts. All around the country, American families have had to decide what is important to them and divide their needs from their wants. Washington, D.C. has to do that. We have to have not just a balanced approach, we need to have a balanced budget. We need to cut our spending, we need to control our spending, and we need to have accountability so that when Washington politicians make decisions that the families back home can take a look at it and decide what are the consequences of these decisions. Now, there have been a lot of consequences that America has suffered because of the failed economic policies of President Obama. One must ask him or herself, when will President Obama admit that his stimulus program was a failure? When will the President admit that the consequences of his health care mandates has killed jobs? When will President Obama admit that cash for clunkers wasn't such a great idea? And most importantly, when will President Obama admit that it's a failure of leadership to present a plan to balance the budget to Congress? We need to see the President's plan. Today we will be voting on yet another Republican proposal to cut spending and control spending and give accountability to our process. But we have yet to have a bill introduced by the President of the United States. And keep in mind, when he was President, as a senator, he voted against increasing the debt ceiling, citing lack of leadership. Today, the bill that we will be considering cuts spending now. It also controls spending because it has an across-the-board trigger that if we spend too much money on our caps, there will be a cut.
Gentleman's time has expired.
30 more seconds.
Oh, I'd like to give the gentleman 1 additional minute. Thank you.
Gentleman's recognized for 1 more minute.
And Madam Speaker, these cuts are real. They are measurable. This is what the American people needs to know, something that is accountable. This puts in place a 10-year budget. The United States Senate, under Harry Reid's leadership, has not had a budget in 3 years. There's no end to their spending without a budget. American families have budget. Why doesn't the U.S. Senate? So this bill puts in accountability, 10 years worth of accountability. It puts in controls and spending across-the-board triggers, and finally it has cuts to it. Again, Madam Speaker, American families have had to tighten their belts. Washington must do the same thing, and that's what we're doing here today. And I urge my colleagues to vote yes on this legislation and yes on the rule. Thank you. Yield back.
Gentleman from Colorado.
The gentleman from Georgia mentioned that the President hasn't introduced a bill. I'd just like to point out that the President of the United States cannot introduce a bill in the House or Senate. The President can sign a bill. In fact, in this particular case, he said he would veto this bill because it increases the deficit, risks increasing it by over $100 billion. I'd like to submit to the record, Madam Chair, a study that shows the difference in interest rates between AAA and AA rating. Without objection? Without objection. Which demonstrably shows, in fact, that if this bill is passed here today with only a 6-month extension, it would likely cost taxpayers over $100 billion. Madam Speaker, I'd like to yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Vermont, Mr. Welsh.
Gentleman from Vermont is recognized for 2 minutes.
I thank the gentleman. What's going on here, Madam Speaker, is extraordinarily dangerous and is completely unnecessary. We are using the full faith and credit of the United States, the reputation this country has had since its founding, that we are a country who pays our bills. We are using that as political leverage to get our way on budget and tax issues. That's wrong. It's dangerous. Ronald Reagan, no stranger to fierce tax and budget battles, would never allow the linkage to be made that would jeopardize the full faith and credit of the United States. We're a bigger and better country than to threaten that we won't pay our bills. This is wrong. We should raise the debt ceiling cleanly, because that's what Americans do. We pay our bills. Second, the bill before us now is, as my friend from Kentucky said, making a bad bill worse. The process that Americans want is a balanced approach. Balance is revenues, along with cuts. Democrats have to make concessions on cuts. We're prepared to do that. The President has led. But there's got to be revenues, particularly when we've got a tax code that is completely a mess. What we've seen is that in the Biden discussions, Mr. Cantor walked out when there were revenues on the table. The Speaker walked out with the President when revenues were still on the table. And now this bill is attempting to impose a constitutional amendment and has no chance of passing, and it in effect is a white flag of surrender to a small group in the Republican caucus who won't pass the bill that was brought to us before. We've got to work together. That means we've got to put everything on the table. We've got to maintain our credit rating by paying our bills, and we have to have a balanced approach to long-term fiscal stability that requires revenues as well as
time
cuts.
has expired.
I thank the Speaker, and I yield back.
Gentleman from Texas.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, at this time I'd like to yield to another one of our 87 new freshmen, a young man who was the mayor of Rogers, Arkansas, one of the most beautiful cities in America, and I'd like to yield 2 minutes to the gentleman, Mr. Womack.
The gentleman from Arkansas is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman, and I want to thank the gentleman not only for yielding some time, but also for his glowing remarks about a great community, one of the 10 most livable cities in all of America that I had the privilege of presiding over for about 12 years as mayor, a city that continues to enjoy tremendous economic development and influence in the state of Arkansas. And let me just say this, using that as a context for my remarks, that I think the model that the community that I had the privilege of presiding over for 12 years is the model that Washington needs. It's a model that balances its budget. When I inherited that city in 1999 as its mayor, it was not a balanced budget. Government was in the way. The discriminate developer did not want to develop in that community because there was too many regulations, too many reasons why they could go elsewhere and have better margins. Well, we changed all that. Now this city is flourishing in a remarkable sort of way. And I want to steal something from a colleague of mine from Mississippi that was said yesterday out on the Triangle in a media event. He said all across America we're sitting down with legal pads and we're drawing that line down the middle and we're discussing the amount of income that we have. This is what's happening to families around the country, what kind of income we have and what kind of expenses we have. And where the expenses exceed the income, we're having to make some very difficult choices as to what do we do without. Well, quite frankly, I think that that's exactly what's happening in this Congress right now. We have to take the legal pad out. We have to decide those things that we can do that we need and those things that we can do without based on the amount of income that we have coming in. The sad thing is, in order to be able to create that kind of fiscal discipline, it's going to take something like a balanced budget amendment to the Constitution in order to guarantee to have an enforcement mechanism that this Congress or future Congresses cannot undo. So it's that context that I bring to the table today. Could I have an additional 30 seconds?
I give the gentleman an additional minute.
It is that basis on which I think this Congress should rally behind the plan that we've offered today that's going to cap spending, that's going to cut spending, and is going to require a balanced budget amendment to the Constitution so that future Congresses can't put us in a similar situation that we are today. So I urge a yes vote. I support it wholeheartedly, and I would ask the American people to join us in promoting fiscal sanity by approving this piece of legislation, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Colorado.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I would like to yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Oregon, Mr. Blumenauer.
Gentleman from Oregon is recognized for 2 minutes.
I appreciate the gentleman's courtesy. Well, we are approaching the real prospect of default for the first time in American history, and we've wasted 2 days. While we've wasted 2 days, the American public has lost over $400 billion of wealth as the stock market started to slide when Speaker Boehner walked away from negotiations with the President, while the Republicans have been twisting arms to make a bill that could never pass the Senate even more objectionable by chasing a few extreme members of their party instead of working with over 180 Democrats on a balanced approach. I would suggest that people think of 3 words. First is recklessness. This is the first time in history that we've taken the debt ceiling discussion and held it hostage. 102 times we have increased it. This is an entirely manufactured crisis. Second is abuse. This is an abuse of power to try and hold this debt ceiling discussion hostage, refusing to compromise, trying to avoid a balanced approach that is supported by the American public and what ultimately is going to be required to solve this problem. The third point is hypocrisy. On this floor, earlier this week, when they actually had the chance to vote for real spending cuts that would be required under their bizarre proposal for spending reductions in the future, when they had a chance to vote for it, this Congress offered up by the Republican Study Committee, and I think it was misguided, but at least it was honest. And what did the Republicans do? They voted it down. 104 of them, including their own subcommittee chairman, because it was too extreme.
Will the House be in order?
Madam Speaker, I'd like to inquire about the time remaining on both sides.
Gentlemen, hold, please. Will the House be in order? Members take their conversations off the floor. Gentleman from Texas.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to inquire about the time remaining on both sides, please.
The gentleman from Texas has 5 minutes, and the gentleman from Colorado has 8.5 minutes remaining.
I'll reserve my time.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Colorado.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Minnesota, Mr. Ellison.
Gentleman from Minnesota is recognized for 2 minutes.
Madam Speaker, many words will be spoken at podiums on the House floor today, some helpful and illuminating, some not. But there are a few facts that need to stand in very stark contrast to all the din. First, this has never happened in the history of the United States, not from the first Congress until this very moment, that a Congress, a caucus in this body has tried to hold hostage the American economy in exchange for raising the debt ceiling. Never before, never. We will distinguish ourselves as a body that has failed and has deliberately harmed the American economy because of obstinance, stubbornness, and recklessness. First time. Second, in 3 and less than a half days, our nation will default. This will, without a doubt, cost dramatic amount of costs on the American people in almost every aspect of our lives, whether it's in the area of credit cards, mortgages, and card notes, and many other areas. Our state and local governments costs will go up. Investors, pensioners, 401k holders will suffer. This is in no way helpful and in dramatic contrast to everything we have ever done before. There's no doubt about it, Madam Speaker. The Republicans and the Democrats have a very different view of the role of government. Democrats believe that a government in partnership with a free market work well and guarantee a strong economy for the American people. And Republicans see almost no role for government at all and speak derisively and contemptuously about government all the time. The American people, I believe, agree. The American people, I believe, will agree with the Democrats, and history will bear us out as being on the right side. I yield back.
Gentleman's time has expired. Gentleman from Texas.
Madam Speaker, day after day, the American people receive more bad news, economic bad news, about the shape our country is in. That is what Republicans respond to. Today, news came out that the first quarter GDP that was provided by the federal government, first quarter, was actually wrong, dead wrong. They said that GDP growth was 1.9%. Today we find out it was 0.4. Madam Speaker, the disastrous results of the Obama-Pelosi years are evident. Republicans want jobs, we need a middle class, and we're willing to fight for it. That's why we're here today with common sense legislation. I reserve my time.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Colorado.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to yield 2 minutes to the gentlewoman from California, Ms. Lee.
Gentlewoman from California is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you very much for yielding. I rise in opposition to this rule and in opposition to the bill that we will vote on later today. And yes, the Bush economic policies have really now come home to haunt us. It's shameful that the Republican Party continues to drive to plunge our nation into default and our economy over the brink. And the bill that Speaker Boehner has unveiled today does exactly that. His plan fails to end the threat of default, and his plan targets, mind you, targets the programs aimed at America's most vulnerable, our seniors, our children, and our low-income families, for more draconian cuts. And this plan would sign these cuts into the Constitution. It would sign these cuts in stone into the Constitution. Trying to balance the budget on the backs of the poor is morally wrong, and it's economically bankrupt. This rule and this bill begins to erode and to dismantle Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security, and it creates more unemployment. There will be more job loss as a result of this rule and bill. Instead of creating jobs, the Republicans are holding our economy hostage once again and threatening to plunge our economy back into recession. Instead of quickly passing a clean debt ceiling vote and bill, the Republicans are marching lockstep towards default. Instead of supporting the safety net that will protect our most vulnerable, the Republicans are trying to balance our budget on the backs of the poor while maintaining tax cuts for millionaires and billionaires and big oil. And it's totally irresponsible to put forth a bill that would put the economy on the brink of disaster once again in 6 months. Madam Speaker, there's no time for these Republican Tea Party games. This rule and this bill turns the American dream into a nightmare for millions. Seniors need to know that they will receive their Social Security checks. Veterans need to know that they can go to the doctor. Small businesses need to know that they have some financial security and stability to create jobs. Defeat this Boehner rule and bill. It's really a default Boehner rule and bill.
Gentleman from Texas.
I reserve my time.
Gentleman reserves his time. Gentleman from Colorado.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to yield 1 minute to the gentleman from Oregon, Mr. DeFazio.
Gentleman from Oregon is recognized for 1 minute.
Tax cuts, tax cuts, tax cuts. Tax cuts solve all problems, especially for the millionaire and billionaire job creators. We're in the 10th year of the Bush tax cuts, $4 trillion. We're in the 3rd year of the Obama tax cuts. Now we have to cut programs to continue the tax cuts that don't create jobs.
one of the specified targets? Student financial aid. Hey, they don't know anybody at the country club who can't afford to put their kid through medical school. But at the top of their list is cutting student financial aid, cutting investments in transportation that could put millions to work, stopping taxes on the aviation industry, which is, guess what? Capturing the money, not lowering prices, and laying off 90,000 people and stopping critical infrastructure jobs for that industry. Tax cuts, tax cuts, tax cuts. Let's get real. Let's do things for the American people, put people back to work, and solve the deficit problem.
Gentleman from Texas.
I'll continue to reserve.
Gentleman reserves, continues to reserve. The gentleman from Colorado.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to yield 1 minute to the gentleman from California, Mr. Garamendi.
Gentleman from California for 1 minute.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Very interesting point in our progress here in America. There's a real difference in view, and we're in the process now of choosing which path this nation would go. This is not about a deficit. This is about the very nature of America. It's about our heart and soul. Are we going to be a country that uses all of our resources, whether they are the public resources or the private resources, to fill the needs of our people, their education, their health care, their well-being after they retire, or are we going to go a different path and not use all of our potential? The Republican proposal that's before us, this is not the first, but it would change America and really drive us back to the 19th century, a time at which the government did not have a social welfare programs such as Social Security and Medicare. Make no doubt about this, and have no doubts, that the proposal before us is a step, a very significant step towards ending Social Security and Medicare. If that's what the American people want, well, we shall see.
Gentleman from Texas.
I continue to reserve.